Redditors who have gone were declared missing. What is your story? I was on vacation for 3 weeks. In the second week my boss called me and asked if everything is okay because the police called them and told them that I was declared missing. My neighbor called the police because he didn't hear me for over a week and was worried about me. Was kind of a good feeling. Mine was weird because I was also a teen runaway but was actually with my parents. In a nutshell, lived on the streets. My parents moved away from that city, so I was left behind. Long story there. But they tried their best for me, but had to let go. Last known address was with a boyfriend who was arrested along with his best friend who was dating my best friend. Landlady obviously evicted them both, which led to me having nowhere to go. Ran out of options in the middle of winter. It was a middle of the night blurry event that resulted in me having nowhere to go. My best friend was able to go to her family somehow or somewhere. We got separated that night and vowed to find each other and regroup and figure it out after some sleep. At this point, after 2 years, just before my 16th b-day, I called my parents, who drove several hours and picked me up at a McDonald's at 5 a.m. and brought me back to their new city. I was determined to start over and get on a good path, with the lone support of my parents, and leave the old life completely behind. The only person I told was my best friend at the time, and I remember we were both crying. She wasn't sure about her family and asked me that once I got settled, maybe she could come to my family as well, for a new start. She went missing right after that, which I didn't know right away. I had one phone call from her where she told me things weren't good, and she was trying to get money for a Greyhound ticket to come to my new city. My boyfriend and her boyfriend were both in jail at the time, since the 4 of us were known to be together. When she went missing, the police's first priority was to find me, but no one knew where I was, so the police themselves marked me also as missing along with her. My parents had a different last name than me and I was a minor, so there wasn't a whole lot of information on me. Basically they knew I was an underage street kid who couldn't be accounted for, whose best friend was also missing. Maybe 2 months later, I was settled into my new life. My parents registered me in school, bought me new belongings. I had lost everything when the landlady kicked my boyfriend out. I got a part-time job and they also got me a therapist through some sort of free social services that got my name into the system. The police has also pieced that her last call was to a number in the same city where I was now registered in social services. While at school one day, the police showed up and brought me into the guidance counselor's office and asked me a hell of a lot of questions that I don't remember now. But I do remember them telling me I was a missing person, and then grilling me about knowing where the other girl was who I didn't even know what missing, and that I had to know something. But it was just a really bizarre coincidence that I had burned out on street life the same time she went missing. The most tragic part of this story is that she had died. Her body was found later that spring, after the snow melted, which I saw on the news. They said she froze to death. No foul play. I had nightmares for so long about this, that she was knocking on my bedroom window pleading to come in from the cold. That was all late 80s. News back then wasn't so dramatic as it is now, and even her death was a small clip in a newspaper. No headlines or anything like that. There was no Amber Alert back then, especially not for street people with criminal boyfriends. The only reason the police were after us was because her mother reported her as missing. A lot of it is a blur to me now. But in 2007, when FB started getting mainstream, I got several messages from people I knew back then, saying they thought I was dead. And was it really me? It was really bizarre. Old friends from that city had said that we both went missing. My friend's body was found and they never knew what became of me. This was about 10 years ago. I had just moved to California with my ex-husband, and the downstairs neighbor in our first apartment was a crazy drug addict that would always bother and harass us. One day the next door neighbors decided to rearrange their apartment and my downstairs neighbor came up threatening to kill me, thinking I was making that noise on purpose. She was a nightmare to deal with. I was sneaking out of my own apartment just so she wouldn't hear me and come running upstairs to hang out. Anyways, I reported this anonymously to the apartments and filed a police report. Apparently this lady had many complaints about her to begin with. After the report, my ex picked me up and we went out for lunch. Well, those dumbasses at the apartment complex went and talked to her and told her everything I had said. Came back to find her knocking on our door screaming. We kept driving and thought, well, went to Walmart, got some camping gear and drove off to go camp at Yosemite for the weekend to escape. I believe we managed to sneak into our app to sleep for a few hours and told another neighbor a quick, "Oh, just going camping this weekend," and I sent texts to my mother, brother and sister. Well, only the text to my sister went through. So the last thing my mom heard from me was about the ordeal with the downstairs neighbor threatening to kill me, and then nothing. Gone for 4 days, come back to cell service and my phone is flooded with frantic voicemails from my mother and brother. They filed a police report thinking my downstairs neighbor had murdered us and was convinced she was wearing our skin as a mask. She didn't believe the other neighbor when they said, "Oh yeah," she thought. That's a cover-up. My daughter has never even been camping. Which was true. That was the first time. After a 3-day ordeal, they finally call my sister to report the bad news that I was murdered. She laughs and tells them I'm camping and my mother pauses and says, "What? How do you know this?" She texted me and told me. Why didn't anyone bother calling me when this all started? I get back into cell service. Hear these messages and immediately call the parents and call off the missing persons report. Hey, remember when you thought I done got murdered? What a crazy weekend that was. Still no laughs. Maybe a few more years need to pass. I left the abusive household I grew up in, leaving a note clearly stating my intentions to never return. An hour or two later I received a call from the police stating that I'd been declared missing. I explained to them my circumstances and they wished me well. Since I was of age, I was free. It'll be 3 years soon. When I was in elementary school, like 8 years old, my brother and me were good friends with 2 guys who were brothers as well. Same age span. One weekend we were all playing NES at their place first and later my friend and me were outside doing stupid things kids would do. Sometime my brother leaves with his friend and comes over to us and tells me that our parents called. They will stay a little longer at my aunt's and uncle's place this night. Nothing too special. But they told him we shouldn't mind our time and can stay outside as long as we want as long as we sleep at home that night. Jackpot. I trusted my brother blindly on this and we proceeded to do stupid stuff like kicking over trash bins. The evening fades and my friend is about to leave to get some dinner and sleep. His parents were also away. I didn't think a second about going home because I was allowed to stay outside for so long and I will definitively enjoy it to its fullest. It is already really dark and I trample down some patches as I wander through my hood. It is beyond 11 p.m. and this is really late for a 8-year-old when I see a car approaching. I was always good with remembering license plates and immediately notices that this are my parents. Since I was raised well behaved, I did what was right. I waved at them as they were passing. They didn't see me first because they immediately hit the brakes once they did, jumped out of the car, screaming and threw me in the back. I had no idea what was happening but was sad that it looks like the night of my life was over. At home I noticed that my mom called the local police telling them that I was safe back home and my dad struggled between punishing me and just being glad I'm home alive. This is when I was able to tell them what happened and why I wasn't home when they came back. You know, bro told me that you called and allowed us to be outside as long as we want today, so I'm not understanding why you are so upset about this. You guessed right. He had no idea what I was talking about. Not exactly sure, but I think it took my brother something around 15 years to admit this. The story of how I went missing is also one of my first memories. When I was 5, I went on holiday with my family to Scotland. We were in the middle of nowhere surrounded by nothing but land dominated by trees. There wasn't much to do, so my sister and I played hide and seek. I thought it would be a great idea to hide right next to the front door of the cottage we were staying in, inside of a giant bush. I watched my sister look for me for about 5 minutes, until she clearly gave up and went inside. However, I never give up on anything, and decided to stay until I was found. After a short period, 15 minutes or so, more people started playing the game. I now watched my parents sprint around in front of me, while I silently giggled in the bush thinking I'm so good at this game. More and more people started to play. Other holiday goers in cottages nearby, park rangers and police. I stayed in that bush for hours and hours until it got dark, having the time of my life. My sister was only 7, so she didn't help look for me and just sat by the doorstep. As it got darker outside, my yellow jacket got brighter, and after a whole day of searching for me in the nearby woods, my sister realized I was stood right next to her. Best game of hide and seek ever. I forget how old I was, but I was probably around 10. My friend and I started raking leaves for cash around our suburban neighborhood. We kept going house to house asking anyone who had a tree in their yard if they wanted them raked for $5. We eventually went to so many houses we got ourselves lost within the criss-cross streets of the neighborhood, since we really never left our block of houses beforehand. Then the sun set and we found ourselves lost trying to recognize street names or anything familiar in the dark with only street lights lighting the way. Eventually, as we're wandering lost, we hear cop sirens and lights blare and pull over and ask for our names. We got picked up and taken back to our houses. It felt like a long drive to us 10-year-olds, but in reality it was like 4 blocks long. Boy did we get the biggest scolding ever, and our parents took our hard-earned money. I mean, I see why they were mad, but taking your money seems like a bad lesson lol. Maybe put it in the bank for a few weeks till after you were grounded ha. As a paramedic we once attended a call for a male with sore feet. Attended a lay-by by the side of a road to a perfectly polite chap, who did have some very nasty blisters. He'd been to a family funeral. Got a bit upset and had gone for a walk to clear his head. Then just kept walking. For 4 days. Turns out he was from the same area as where I grew up, about 250 miles away, and we reminisced about the countryside and some of the good pubs etc. He admitted that maybe he was a bit depressed and probably needed some help. Unfortunately all we could offer was a trip to hospital. But we did what we could. Later that shift I'm perusing Facebook and see an old school friend has shared a missing person appeal. It's our walking patient. Rang the police and told them where our chap was. And they were very pleased, as they expected a dog walker to find him hanging somewhere. I was 8 and on vacation. Decided to go for a walk without telling anyone. Played all afternoon in the beach. Came at night. Ooh boy was everyone mad.